Alrighty, boys and girls, welcome back to another solo episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show. It feels like we're doing this more than shows together nowadays, but hey, 'tis the life of a podcaster that makes no money. And so we have other jobs and other obligations and families. And that is why you just have me today to recap what was an excellent day in the Champions League for Aston Villa. Go check out the socials in the show notes. Contest coming soon. Hopefully, if Chris, who I can call out since he's not here to defend himself, actually gets on editing that legal documentation. But honestly, we're not here to talk about that. Villa won in the round of 16 of the Champions League. Yes, I will say it again. Villa won in the round of 16 in the Champions League. That is a real statement that we are saying in the year 2025. So let's dive right into it. Tactical setup for Villa. Konsa, Mings, Disasi start at in the back with Luka Dean. Disasi was ultimately the right back. We'll get into him a little bit later. Very impressed with him. Leon Bailey, in a bit of a surprise, starts over Marco Asensio. I think we all thought when we saw Leon Bailey starting that FA Cup match, and frankly, as Chris and I said, with how poor he was in that FA Cup match, apparently he listens and decided he wanted to prove me wrong when I said this season was over for Leon Bailey. I think, honestly, what we're seeing from that is, and people are going to hate me for this, they're probably going to cancel this podcast. I can already see a few individuals from the group chat who will remain who will remain nameless, simply putting us on silent and throwing down their phones. But like it or hate it, Leon Bailey is in Unai Emery's circle of trust. I cannot think of another reason why in back-to-back knockout round games, the two potentially biggest games of Villa's season, Leon Bailey is putting those. And it doesn't matter how poor he's been. I would say the disparity between the performance versus the number of starts and involvements a player has had, there is no one higher in the Villa squad. We've criticized John McGinn. We've criticized Tyrone Mings. We've criticized Ollie Watkins, a number of different players. But for the performance versus how much opportunity they've gotten, Leon Bailey has to top the squad. And you might have been able to say before, well, Philogene wasn't really pushing behind him. We brought in Marco Asensio from PSG, who is scoring in bunches, and yet he did not start in either of these two games. And so I think what you see there is the fact that Unai Emery really trusts Leon Bailey. He really trusts his defensive work rate, his ability to push for the team. And if you go back to what Chris very astutely pointed out after Lille last year, I think it's Leon Bailey's leadership as a captain on the field, even if he doesn't have the armband. You remember we have time. And you saw him come through this morning. So let's dive right into it. First 20 minutes, Villa on top. Third minute, beautiful goal for Villa. Another well-worked set piece, leading the Premier League in this category. I don't know the Champions League stats for it, but we've got to be up there as well. Clearly, Tyrone Mings, the target the entire time. I don't know what the Bruges defender is doing there, giving him that much space, but great job by Mings to get up for that and just put the ball in a dangerous area. Leon Bailey comes in late with a beautiful first-time touch into the bottom corner. I think we all know how difficult it is to hit a ball like that in a crowd, coming down just off the half volley and place it that perfectly into the corner. Obviously, I'm a big fan of his, so I'm really excited for him, but I think that really put him on the course to have a really effective 60-65 minutes. 8th minute, I thought it was another great day for Marcus Rashford offensively, and actually he didn't necessarily look like the liability defensively, despite Villa being under pressure for a large portion of the match that he was in there. So nice application from him. But 8th minute, great run. The way he kind of flicks it over the sliding defender, cuts to the middle, gets it out to Leon Bailey, who actually has a really nicely weighted ball back to him. He puts a good shot in on net. Not a great angle. Goalie makes a save. I mean, Could you say he should have slipped in Bailey or maybe Morgan Rogers a little sooner? Sure, but like I'm taking that. I like his initiative to cut into the middle. I don't know that some of our other players do that, make the defenders make a move. So great work by him. But ultimately it comes unraveled in the 11th. It's yes, slow by Leon Bailey to get back in defense there. Absolutely. Not really blaming Disasi on this one. I think ball goes over the top, squares him up, makes him make a pass, doesn't let him go anywhere. So I'm fine with that. Uh, on some level, though, you got to just say that's some beautiful play by Club Brugge. The turnover by Rogers in the middle of the park. They play it really quickly in there, and the ability to pick up their head and see that long diagonal ball over the top. I sometimes, and then to see the cutback, beautiful finish to put it by Emi Martinez. Like sometimes you got to hold up your hands and just say the opposition got that one. There's no one really to blame on the Villa side. Yes, Leon Bailey should be, quicker to that defensive movement, but great play by Bruges. And so it's 1-1. Um, and then we kind of move forward into the 20th to 85th, really. From that point on, I mean, you had a couple nice plays by some Villa players, absolutely. 14th minute, Bailey has a nice cross into a dangerous area. You talk about some of the moves that Morgan Rogers was making down one side. I thought he was creating a ton, really showing his strength and ability to dribble. Marcus Rashford beating some guys to the byline and playing in some crosses, but 20 to 85th was a lot of Bruges dominance. And we previewed this a couple days ago when we were looking at this match. We said Bruges likes to control the game, slow passing, expect them to slowly work Villa back into their defensive half and really kind of suffocate the life out of this, not just sit back and play defense. And you really saw them do this. They were very impressive, proving themselves to be the attacking outfit that they are. And a different day with some different shooting boots. I mean, we might be talking about an entirely different result, whether that's a Bruges win or even a 3-1, or I should say a draw or even like a 3-1 Bruges win. Um, they certainly took advantage of some stuff. I mean, 30th minute, we survived the classic Mings mistake. He comes flying out of nowhere for a header that is not his, clears out Ezri Konsa, and winds up leaving the left side of our defense wide open for a shot. Luckily, Emi Martinez makes a great save on it. We certainly were sloppy a little bit with our possession out of our final third, but you kind of got to credit Bruges' press with that. And ultimately, they just really kept the possession on, kept working it around slowly. I wouldn't say it was the most exciting game for a lot of this sequence, but you really had to admire their ability to manipulate Villa and try and create some opportunities. What I'll say though on the other side is that I don't want this to be lost in this game, especially with the fact that he got subbed, but very, very, very impressed with Axel Disasi as a right back. Um, you look at the 28th minute, for example. He beats a guy to the ball, um, dribbles away, but also has the presence of mind to play it out wide to Leon Bailey with his weaker left foot and right in stride for Bailey to create something. That is not easy. I don't know that Konsa, let alone any of our regular right backs, really are able to make a move athletically, technically like that. They're not that kind of player. I still think Disasi is naturally a right-sided center back, but I have, frankly, a lot more faith in him playing right back than I do Ezri Konsa, and I think Unai Emery feels the same way. That's why you saw the lineup the way it was today. I talked about his 1v1 defending earlier, complimented him on a number of different occasions. Think about Ipswich, the way that he was able to put Liam Delap off on a few of those opportunities. That's a loan signing that I'm fairly impressed by. I don't know the wages that he's on or what it would take to get him in full time, but it almost feels like he is a more likely full-time purchase at the end of this year than we might feel Marcus Rashford or Marco Asensio is. But not talking about the summer yet. Let's keep on with the game. Obviously, Ali and the attackers started to get very isolated as Bruges exerted more influence over this game. Um, Ultimately, their poor finishing saved us. You look at the 73rd minute, Bruges should have had their second before Villa got theirs. Vanaken, beautiful ball into, I believe, their left winger who had a nightmare day, who just absolutely skies it over. Um, 90 plus two. Now, granted, we were 3-1 up at that point, but Bruges carved through Villa again, play it into the center. Guy gets it like around the 18-yard box. And I'm not saying he should score, but he also skies it over. Probably should have put it on net, made Emi Martinez work. Obviously, for a large portion of that game, Bruges were carving out the better opportunities, and those were two that I think they really should have done better with. But you know what? You're always going to have a few of those every game, and Villa weathered it, particularly on the road, and ultimately they made the most of the opportunities that they had. Now, before we get to those, I think what was interesting was that when Villa made all their subs on the 64th minute, not much changed in terms of our ability to control the game, but one thing did change in our attacking buildup. Maybe unsurprisingly, when Matt Cash comes on, Disasi goes off, Kamara comes in, McGinn goes off. You see that switch in how Villa would build up. So Kamara was then dropping back into the back three with Konza and Mings, and Cash was playing very high and wide on the right hand side. What this did was, with Asensio going middle and Rogers going right, Rogers was able to drift very centrally and still try and get on the ball and try and combine with Marco Asensio. And then you had Yori as almost more of like a single pivot in the middle of midfield, and then Dean high wide left playing with Jacob Ramsey. And I think there are positives and negatives to this kind of attacking buildup, and it's probably going to depend on who we're playing and what we're looking to get out of the game. Um, Obviously, getting Rogers closer to Asensio potentially allows for a little bit more creativity, a little bit more ability to slip between the lines, and combine and create with probably our two most creative attacking players. But you run the risk, as we've said before, of them potentially getting in each other's way. That's something that we're going to need to figure out as they get to know each other better. But honestly, I think the bigger thing that we need to keep an eye on when Villa go to this kind of buildup is what happens to Boubacar Kamara. Now, where I feel like Kamara has been most effective and really shown his quality, frankly, proved Chris and I wrong when we thought that Onana was going to keep him out of the squad entirely, is his ability to play either on the half turn with his back to defense, with some of the feints that he has, an ability to turn on the ball and take defenders out of the play. We've said a bunch of times this year how a defender will play the ball into him in the midfield, and he has such good tight control and able to maneuver his shoulders and throw guys off that he'll take three guys out of the play, no problem. When you have him dropping into the back line, all he does is have the whole game in front of him. And yeah, he can pick a pass, he can play it around fine, no big deal. But that dribble turn ability, I think, is something very unique to him that we don't necessarily see with this buildup. So maybe that's something that doesn't necessarily happen if a team is pressing us higher. Again, I think Bruges were effective in their defense and ability to turn us over, but it wasn't like they were a super aggressive pressing outfit. So it wasn't necessarily needed for Kamara to do that. But it is something that as we play different teams that press a little bit higher, I'm going to be curious to see if we utilize him in this way or if we utilize him more in the midfield. So from the 85th minute on, Villa, frankly, get lucky. 82nd minute own goal. Uh, what is there to really say? Villa hadn't really been attacking. They definitely played quick the way that we like to see them play. And Rogers puts it in the middle, and we get a lucky bounce. And sometimes, like Chris says, you have to put it in there and just make something happen. And that's exactly what they did. And you saw once we went 2-1 up, Bruges, if I'm reading the faces correctly in the replays, that really defeated them. They felt like they were on top. They felt like if there was going to be a winner for this game. It was going to be them. And to have that go against you, I think is really deflating. And I think that's why we saw the compounding effect with what we did for the third. I'm gonna be honest though, I don't know why that was a penalty. Uh Really unlucky. In case you didn't hear it on the broadcast or didn't see it, it was the same guy that skied over the great opportunity in the 70 whatever minute. Um, yes, he dives in. Yes, he leaves his foot there. I didn't see any contact on Matt Cash. I thought that was a dive. I was surprised that the VAR didn't send the referee to the monitor, especially with Cash going away from the play. I think that was really soft and really, really unlucky for Club Brugge. I'm not complaining, uh, obviously, but we got to be honest. If that's going against Villa, I'm livid, and I would guess that most Villa fans would be livid, saying that that was a dive and that he was a cheat. So, got to call it like we see it. That being said, beautiful penalty by Marco Asensio. Even slipping while he does it to put that past Mignolet, who guesses right and actually has a really nice dive at it. Um, Really nice to see. Really nice to feel confident with our penalty taker walking up, and he continues to score in bunches and continues to be starred over by Leon Bailey. Chris and I texted a little bit about this. I think that it might be, or I should say, he made the good suggestion that it might be that Marco Asensio is simply a great super sub right now, spot starter. As we said beforehand, didn't start, didn't play for a couple months, had trouble staying fit before that. So probably still working up to consistent 90-minute match fitness, whereas what we've seen from Marcus Rashford is that he is super athletic and very fit, regardless of how much time he was getting. Asensio might be better served in those 30 minutes, willing to and able to pick on a tiring defense. Um, don't have a ton of other good points. Mentioned Disasi, mentioned Rashford. Really happy with what Leon Bailey was able to do. Didn't really put much of a foot wrong. Um, and not much on the bad side either. Outside of the goal, Villa defended fairly solidly. They really kept a good attacking side in Club Brugge at arm's length. Yes, we gave up a couple opportunities, but Brugge are a really good team at home. That's gonna happen. And ultimately, when you roll out 3-1 winners away in the Champions League, uh, you gotta take that and be happy with it. This is actually one where I'm leaning more towards the Chris side of you take the result and go home and be happy with it. So, if we look at the larger implication on the season, transition here quickly. Um, we're looking good for next week. I mean, you don't want to jinx it, but and so I'll knock on wood. You can hear me knock on wood doing that. Uh, to blow a 3-1 lead at home, I think would be a monumental collapse. Now, Bruges showed today that they belong here. Absolutely. Like I said, another day that's potentially a 3-1 Bruges win. But doesn't really matter. Villa are going home to Villa Park where we do not really lose often. And all we need is a draw. Hell, we could have a 1-0 loss. Hell, we could have a 2-0 loss and still advance. So we got to feel good about that. We've obviously got a match in between, but like we're pretty close to seeing Aston Villa in the quarterfinals of a Champions League, and it just blows my mind to even say that out loud, knowing where this club has come from. This also isn't really on the season impact, but uh, Hans Vanaken, what a player! Oh my God, the way that he just has this free role in that Bruges team to pick up the ball, create, playing passes all over the place. He had that header that I don't think it was going in, uh, but for the Ming's shoelace intervention, um, probably hits the post. I think I'm not sure that Mings really alters the direction of it that much. Great athleticism though, honestly. Um, Good game by him. Um, but he just gets involved. And like I was looking at his stats. So he's actually been with Bruges for a decade since the 14-15 season. And I'm kind of surprised. He basically is double digit goals and assists every single year. And by his age 26 year, I think he had like 16 goals, 10 assists or something like that in the Belgian league. And I'm surprised that somewhere bigger didn't necessarily come calling, because I feel like everyone could use a player that big, that good with his feet, and that much of an ability to pull the strings. But hey, maybe he loves it in Belgium, and you know what? He stayed there, become captain, and um, I'm sure he's got a real legacy. But just wanted to applaud him for all he's done in both games versus Villa so far, and I'm sure we'll see him do something else exciting next week. Although hopefully it's not too exciting. So with that, we'll call it quits on the Champions League until Chris comes back on the weekend and previews our next match against Bruges. And instead, let's start our preview for this weekend against Brentford. And that will be Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. We are away in London, where no one, I don't actually know this for sure, but I feel like no one is a better manager than Unai Emery in the city of London. Now, last time out, Brentford at the time were the worst away team in the league. I think technically maybe Southampton had a worse goal differential, but Brentford were 19th, tied for 20th. Villa raced out to a 3-0 lead and ultimately won 3-1. Gave up a goal very much against the run of play at Damsgaard, because Villa never keep a clean sheet. We outshot them 20-1. We outshot them 10-1 on target. Of course, their one goal on target went in. Oh, forgot to mention with Bruges, we are now at 18 this year where the first goal went in. So what? Villa have played probably 40 matches, give or take, this year, and conceded the first shot on target in 21 of them. That's awful. Anyway, that's what happened against Brentford last time. But other than that, wasn't really fair or close. Now, since then, their home and road splits are still fairly stark, but they are having a bit of a regression to the mean. So they are now 7th at home, again, down from 2nd, and they're up to 13th away from home, up from 19th. So you got to figure, if you take those first 10 or so games out, the home record might look a little worse, but the away record would also look a little better. So, so they're now somewhere in the middle in terms of how they've performed. And they were on a bit of a bad run since December. I feel like we've been saying this lately about a lot of different teams, but they only won twice from December 15th until February 2nd. Now, they've arrested that a little bit. They've now won 3 of their last 5, beating Crystal Palace. We know what a good team they are now. West Ham, still not great. Leicester, awful. And then a draw against what is now a pretty good Everton team. So they are in a bit of decent form and a bit of an upswing. In terms of what I'm expecting from them tactically, they are good in the air. They look to create from through balls, and they're really good at coming back from losing positions. As we said earlier this year, they really like to attack down that right-hand side. And Mbuemo's out there. Wisa tend to float out to the right-hand side. Those are definitely their 2 most deadly attackers, so that makes sense. Nearly 40% of their attacks come down the right-hand side at home. And they do have some longer balls. So what am I looking for here? I'm really looking for them to attack that Mings or Torres, if he's healthy again. Obviously, he was on the bench today, didn't feature, but that Mings or Torres gap between them and Luka Dean. We've seen a lot of teams in recent weeks target that side of Villa, taking advantage of Tyrone Mings and the space that they can find behind our left back, who's often much higher up the pitch. Look for Brentford to attack there, play through, try and play quickly past us, again, the way that we've seen Villa beaten before. But conversely, they're weak to attacks down the wing. So I think this is another game where Marcus Rashford's attacking ability may really be on show. In terms of players to look out for, none of this is really going to surprise anyone who knows much about the Premier League. But Mbuemo, 15 goals, 4 assists. Wisa, 13 goals, 2 assists. And then Damsgaard in the middle pulling the strings, highlighted him earlier this year. 2 goals and 10 assists. So look for Damsgaard to be feeding Mbuemo and Wisa, trying to create those opportunities. All three of those guys do significantly more damage at home than they do away. Probably unsurprising given Brentford's record. Now, Kevin Shada seems to come off the bench a decent bit. 15 starts, 12 substitute appearances, or I should say, I think it's actually 15 appearances, 12 as a sub. He has 7 goals and 2 assists, and is actually their third leading goal scorer. So look for him to come off the bench and potentially create some damage. 23-year-old attacking mid winger. No real injury problems for Brentford. Norgard and Rico Henry are probably the two biggest losses, although based on the most recent projections I was able to find, they are going to be in contention again on Saturday. So what do I expect from a Villa lineup? I think that we will see the same back four that we did today. Obviously, Cash has been in and out with his injury. I don't know that we're going to start him again right away. I think we'll see him again off the bench. And obviously, as I said, Disasi played well. Konsa, Mings, and Luka Dean. I think it's still too early for Pau Torres, but much like Cash, we might see him off the bench if Villa are able to get a comfortable lead. I think we'll still see McGinn and Tielemans in the midfield. Kamara might have to wait one more, although I will be interested to see if he starts for John McGinn. And I'll get back to that in a second, because across the front line, I don't see any way where you don't have Rashford, Rodgers, Ollie Watkins, and then probably Marco Asensio starting this one. Although, honestly, the way that he's been playing, I wouldn't be surprised to see Leon Bailey. The other option, though, if Unai Emery doesn't want to bench his captain, is John McGinn playing that right attacking midfielder role, and Kamara coming in to start as defensive midfielder again. You have to imagine, with Brentford being at home and as good at home as they are, that Unai might want to go a little bit more defensively. What starting McGinn as right winger, right mid also enables us to do is, obviously, he's going to sit back a little bit more and really protect Disasi. And so from a defensive formation, you have him drop. Kamara can play more centrally. Tielemans can play more left-sided in the midfield. And then you're kind of protecting Marcus Rashford and his defensive frailties. Because you've got a really strong right-hand side with Disasi and John McGinn. So all those guys can shift. So you almost wind up with, like, defensively speaking, a 4-3-3, where you have the back four, the three midfielders I just mentioned. Then Rashford can stay a little bit higher with Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rodgers, and potentially play on the counter a little bit. That's an interesting wrinkle that I could see Unai Emery going with. It really depends on Kamara's fitness and if he's able to go a full 90. I'm not sure you want to with the cascading injuries that he's having from his ACL, and really wanting him for the Champions League and FA Cup runs. But what do I know? So anyway, yeah, those are kind of the lineups that I go with. Probably hinting at my tactics there. I do think that Brentford is going to kind of be the aggressor. I think that we're really going to need to keep a strong watch on that attacking triumvirate that I mentioned, and then look to use the pace and skill of Rashford, of Rodgers, of Ollie Watkins on the counter. Ollie, again, has not scored in a while. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily been missing opportunities either. He's looked a tad isolated in recent weeks, and so got to find some ways to get him more involved, and hopefully get him on the ball end of some balls, and get him on the score sheet. So that's kind of all we got for now. Really wish that we had Chris's input for some feedback here instead of me just talking into the void once again. But doesn't really matter. We are on to Saturday, as I kind of hinted. Chris will be alone for that one while I am at a wedding. Shout out Sean. And then we'll both be back, hopefully, to recap Bruges next week. So until Chris returns, let's enjoy this Champions League victory. Let's enjoy this amazing run that Villa continue to be on. Oh, actually, Jesus, this is why you can't leave me alone. Normally, I'm the one keeping us on track. I forgot a score prediction. It's funny. I was just talking about optimism, but we wouldn't be the lukewarmest of lukewarm podcasts if we didn't bring it down a notch afterwards. Villa have been terrible after Champions League matches, particularly after we've been away. Brentford being so good at home, I don't see it. And so I'm gonna predict a Brentford victory. I will say 2-1 Brentford before Villa go home to hopefully beat Club Brugge at Villa Park. And you know what? At this point in the year, I'm taking Champions League and FA Cup victories over Premier League ones. And I'm not ashamed about it. So until then, hopefully I'm wrong once again. But until then, up the Villa. Hi, Mom and Dad.